Well, we're back for another year of movies, and it's currently snowing outside, so I thought what better way to bring in the new year with joy than expressing my favorite movies of 2021. Now, this isn't going to be my best movies of 21, meaning the best movies that came out this year. This is going to be the best movies that I watched this year. So I hope you enjoy this. Sit back and relax. Might be a little bit of a long video, but we'll get through it together. Let's do it. Now, when people ask me for movie recommendations, it's a bit awkward because the movies that I'm into are kind of not for everyone. And the same holds true for this video. The movies that I'm going to recommend today are the best movies that I saw this year, but not necessarily your favorite movies of this year and not necessarily ones that you'll enjoy. So take that to heart when you're going on to Netflix or whatever it may be to watch these movies, because these are just mine. It's completely subjective. So let's get right into it. Okay, so the first movie that I'm going to be talking about today is called Freaky. Now, Freaky is a movie about, it's a comedy horror featuring Vince Vaughn and someone named Catherine Newton. After swapping bodies with a deranged serial killer, a young girl in high school discovers she has less than 24 hours before the change becomes permanent. Now, I had a lot of fun with this movie. There's a lot to like here. It never takes itself too seriously. I feel like the movie knows that it's not very scary for most people, and it's just a lot of fun. And I thought the performances, both from Vince Vaughn and the lead actress Catherine Newton, were really fun to watch. Obviously not going to win any awards. I think this movie actually came out in 2020, so not going to be winning any awards, period, but I had a lot of fun watching Freaky. Okay, the next movie on the list is called Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. And this movie really, I saw it early in the year. I think I saw it in January. And it struck me by surprise because this is not a movie that is really for the faint of heart. So it's about a pair of teenage girls in rural Pennsylvania that travel to New York City to really seek out medical help for an abortion. And right off the bat, this is clearly Oscar buzz. It's a hot button issue that the Academy loves to talk about. So it's gonna be one of those movies. But what I will say, and despite what your opinion might be of this movie, I really felt like the performances as well as the direction were that to be commended. Now, the movie really takes on like an individual's perspective of what if you were this young girl that was in this situation, and I really feel like you can empathize with the girl as you're watching the movie, and it's really crushing at certain points. So not for the faint of heart, but I really enjoyed Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. Okay, third on the list is going to be a classic, and this is one of my all-time favorite romantic comedies. It's called When Harry Met Sally. So you probably have heard the lines before. I'll have what she's having, whatever it might be else from When Harry Met Sally. It's a classic movie. Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan are a dynamic duo. When you watch this movie, you really warm up to these characters, and Billy Crystal can seem like a jerk at the beginning of the movie, but every time I watch this, I see something different, and every time it hits me a little bit differently in the way that I perceive these characters, and they're really heartfelt. So I always shed a tear at the end of this movie. I know you're going to enjoy it. Even if you don't like romantic comedies, it really struck a chord with me, and I've seen this movie probably 50 times by now, but let's make it 51 this year. Another rewatch for January of this year, I watched a movie called Upgrade. I think this came out in 2018. Yes, 2018. Upgrade is set in the near future, where technology controls nearly all of life's aspects. But when the world of Gray, a self-labeled technophobe, is turned upside down, his only hope for revenge is an experimental computer chip implant. Now, are you a fan of John Wick or The Matrix, or one of those movies where there's really good action sequences, and you can see all the action and the characters are fighting, and it's part action, part comedy, but there's still a story there? Well, Upgrade is that movie times 10. It really takes that technology-focused side of things, think about like Black Mirror, that sort of thing, and puts it into a movie that's like John Wick, where the character's fighting, he's beating people up, the computer is assisting him to make these complex fighting sequences, and he's arguing with the computer the whole time. No, I don't want to beat this guy up. I don't want to do something that would cause harm to anyone. And it really sticks with you. It's a really funny movie. I think you'll enjoy it if you don't mind a little bit of action sequences or violence. It's worth it because the movie is really enjoyable, and this was the second time I've seen it. I'll probably watch it again, but let me know what you think of Upgrade. So the first documentary of 2021 that I watched is called The Last Blockbuster. And The Last Blockbuster is about The Last Blockbuster. It's a documentary about the Last Blockbuster in Bend, Oregon. And it follows the people that own the shop, sort of the history of Blockbuster, where it went wrong. I know one part of the documentary they talk about how the misconception is that Netflix killed Blockbuster, but they sort of flip that on its head and explain why Blockbuster really killed themselves. They didn't really adapt to the market, but they also found that they did adapt to the market, but just at the wrong time. So personally, I love this movie because I remember going to Blockbuster Video to rent movies like the ones we're talking about in this video. And if you have that same nostalgia, I know you're going to like this movie. But even if you don't, this movie really does a good job of conveying that feeling of stepping into a Blockbuster Video, smelling the candy, and going through the aisles of new releases, as well as the classics among the aisles in Blockbuster. And you just don't get that sensation these days when watching movies on Netflix or Hulu or whatever it might be. You have the entire world's worth of movies at your disposal at your computer, and it's just not the same as going through some DVDs, picking up the case and looking at the back and reading a description. I wish they had more blockbusters, honestly. So this movie really brought that out in me, and I hope you enjoy The Last Blockbuster. Pieces of a Woman is starring Vanessa Kirby and Shia LaBeouf, however you say his name. This movie is another one of those that's not for the faint of heart. It's actually about a young mother that, well, I won't spoil what happens, but she has a very difficult, traumatic experience with her husband that really breaks up the family. And you sort of see that entire sequence, and let me just tell you, the first 20 minutes of this movie will blow you away. You'll feel dejected, you'll feel like, wow, what did I just watch? And then the movie just keeps going. And I've heard criticisms that the second 2/3 of this movie are kind of slow and kind of wavering and not really feel like they match the first 20-30 minutes of this movie. And I think that's a fair criticism, but I will say that that first 20 minutes makes watching this movie, Pieces of a Woman, completely worth it. and the performances are just excellent, and you're not going to get this type of emotional reaction out of any other movie that you watch this year. Pieces of Woman is not an easy watch, but I think you will enjoy it if that's something that you're looking for. So check out Pieces of a Woman. All right, we're finally getting to the section of the year where I started watching some horror movies. I think I watched Relic in April of this last year. Now, Relic is about a daughter, mother, and grandmother who are all, for one reason or another, living together in the same house. And some things start happening to the grandmother where she starts not to feel well, she starts to sort of forget things. But then the movie takes a turn and, hyperbolic or whatever, she starts to turn into some sort of monster. And that's figurative, of course. But when you think about your grandma or your family turning against you and turning into something evil that you don't recognize, it's really difficult to watch. But I will say that the message at the end of this movie is why I liked it. It's one of those horror movies where the monster is not what you think it is, and I think the end of the movie really makes it clear. Hey everybody watching this video, I just wanted to let you know we did have some technical difficulties recording a few of these segments, so I'm just going to do an audio overdub for a few of the movies that I wanted to talk about, and I'll try to make it as interesting as possible. So right after Relic, we were going to talk about a movie that I loved this year called Saint Maud. So Saint Maud comes from A24, one of the best production companies of all time, and it's about a pious nurse that becomes dangerously obsessed with saving the soul of her dying patient. I kind of like recording audio only. It makes it a lot easier to focus on what I'm saying. And what I will say about Saint Maud is that it is one of the best horror movies that you will see in the past 10 years. Saint Maud is the classic slow burn A24 movie that really packs in more than you expect, from the religious aspects to the scary images that are going to be on screen, and it's really thought-provoking. And what I will say, that at the end of Saint Maud, I truly felt that I had seen something purely unique and horrifying. That is this movie about this woman who's going through a transformation, and if that's something that sounds interesting to you, I definitely recommend checking out Saint Maud. All right, I wanted to talk next about a movie that I saw on Netflix this year. It is a musical comedy coming from a comedian named Bo Burnham. And Bo Burnham made a comedy special on Netflix this year called Inside. And if you haven't heard about this movie or heard the songs or seen any clips from this movie, I highly recommend seeing this movie without hearing anything else. So go ahead, stop the video, turn on Netflix, and watch this movie, Bo Burnham's Inside, and then come back and start the video again. Did you do it? Nah, I know you didn't do it. Come on, let's go. Turn on Netflix. Just kidding. All right, so let's talk about Bo Burnham's Inside. It is a beautiful comedy, and it feels wrong to call this a comedy special because it is really uh, about some serious topics. Bo Burnham is going through the same things that everyone was going through in the pandemic. He is experiencing depression and angst and not really knowing what to do with his life, and the only thing he knows how to do is to tell jokes or truths about reality. And I think that there's a lot of blending of truth and humor in this movie. And I think if you watch this movie and don't find anything you relate to, that's going to be really hard to believe, because this is just a truly heartfelt comedy special that has some amazing songs, and I laughed out loud several times watching this, and enough that I'd be willing to put it on this list. So I really recommend you go see it. It's going to change the way you look at comedy specials on Netflix, but also at the world. And you can't say that a lot about comedy specials. So definitely check out Bo Burnham's Inside. From writer-director Tom McCarthy comes a movie called Stillwater, which is about a father that travels from Oklahoma to France to help his estranged daughter, who is in prison for a murder she claims she did not commit. Now, when I saw Stillwater in the summer of 2021, I expected this to be a procedural drama because the director Tom McCarthy also made a great movie called Spotlight, which is very procedural journalism where these journalists are going from door to door asking questions, and it's a little bit dialogue heavy. And I think you can expect a little bit less dialogue from Stillwater. There's still quite a bit of talking and still quite a bit of character development in Stillwater, enough to really make you care for these characters. But then you see Matt Damon going from place to place in this foreign country in France to help his daughter, and it's really endearing the way that he cares for her, even going to lengths that you might not go yourself. It's one of those movies that the protagonist is not necessarily going to be acting with the greatest intentions. And I love movies that challenge the viewer like that. Matt Damon is going around to shady business dealings and talking to lawyers and trying to get into some trouble just to help his daughter out. And I really enjoyed watching it unfold. I think this movie took me by surprise, and I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did. I definitely recommend you check out Stillwater. It's worth your time, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. Now let's go back to Jeremy on video. The next movie I saw this year was called The Green Knight, and this was another one of those A24 movies that I was really anticipating. I think I also saw the trailer maybe close to 2 years ago. Me and my friends were so excited to see The Green Knight because it was one of those big budget A24 movies as opposed to the ones that really just come straight to streaming. And I love this movie. It's based on the Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. I might be mispronouncing that, but it's an old medieval story about a man with really nothing to show for himself, living in medieval Europe, encountering an evil woodland creature kind of guy who asks him for a challenge. And he says, you strike me now, and then in a year, you'll come back to where I live, and I'll return the favor. And it's really a story about courage and about being true to your own moral values. And I really found a lot to like in The Green Knight. The cinematography is beautiful, the characters are really engaging, and I really felt the story is one that sticks with you. I mean, there's so many different things that you could just pick out one scene in The Green Knight that is just so remarkable, and the film is filled with all sorts of things like that that just sort of stick with you. And it's really almost cartoonish in a way, the way the story develops. And I think you'll really enjoy The Green Knight. I know I did. So check it out and let me know what you think. From M. Night Shyamalan comes Old, which is, I don't know, he's probably made, 15, 16 movies at this point. But M. Night Shyamalan, one of my early inspirations as a director. I really looked forward to seeing his movies, whether it was Unbreakable, Signs, or The Village, which I know is a controversial movie. But Old is just another addition to M. Night Shyamalan's storied career, in which he takes some relatively simple story. You go onto a beach and it just speeds up the aging process to a point where you can visually see it. And he makes it interesting. He makes the characters feel I'm not going to say they feel real, because I think he got these actors, I don't know where, they weren't that good. But it felt a little bit off, and I think it worked. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but I really enjoyed Old for the fact that you really didn't know where it was going, and you wanted to see where it was going. You know, would these characters be able to get off the beach that was causing them to rapidly age? What would happen at the end? You know, that's really what kept me going. And the ending was satisfying, at least enough to make it onto this list, and I think it's worth your time. Next, we have The Wolf of Wall Street, which is what I consider to be a classic Martin Scorsese film, of course starring Leonardo DiCaprio as Jordan Belfort, who is this Wall Street big shot who loses his job in the stock market crash in the 80s and starts selling pink slip penny stocks. And he finds a way to creatively swindle people out of their whole life savings to invest in these penny stocks, and brings his friends along. You know, when I first watched this movie, I really liked it. I really liked the characters, and like all good Scorsese movies, you're not supposed to like the main characters, and that's something I didn't really realize. But now that I watch it again, it's just a great time. But also, it also says a lot about Wall Street and what those people who trade your stocks every single day, what they might be like. Jordan Belfort is a really smart guy, and DiCaprio has one of his best performances. I would say my favorite performance by DiCaprio, for sure. And this is quite a long movie, but it goes by so fast. So I think you'll really like Wolf of Wall Street if you like other Scorsese movies. This has, of course, been out for I think at least 10 years. So if you haven't seen Wolf of Wall Street, make sure you check it out. All right, September of 2021, I saw a movie on HBO Max. It was straight to HBO Max, called Malignant, and this is a James Wan movie. James Wan, of course, made Saw, the Conjuring movies, and I didn't really know at the time that I was watching those movies how influential of a director James Wan is, but once I knew that the guy that made Saw and the guy that made The Conjuring was making a new movie, I had to see it. And I think he took a departure from horror before Malignant, so this was a nice return to horror. But Malignant is not a horror movie, and what I'll say is there's a point in the movie where it really just like flips on its head, and you realize, wait a second, like, what am I watching? I mean, it's just like off the wall crazy, and yes, there are horror elements, but I think in the same way Cabin in the Woods or one of those satirical horror movies that sort of flips the genre on its head looks, I think Malignant does a great job of sort of challenging what you think about the modern horror movie, and it's kind of crazy, and it's all sorts of fun. So check out Malignant. I think my favorite scene, there's this really long chase scene where the police are hunting down this person that's committing all these murders, and it's just so bizarre, and you just gotta see it. So check out Malignant if it sounds interesting to you. Titane, or Titane, or however you pronounce it, I don't speak French, is a movie about a woman that gets herself involved in these crimes. There's a bunch of murders and convictions, and there's one scene towards the beginning of the movie. If you've read the synopsis, you probably already know, but she commits this act with a motor vehicle. I don't want to say anything more than that, but it's really strange, and what happens after that is equally as strange. Titane was probably top 3 movies. I know I said Saint Maud or whatever it was earlier, but Titane blew me out of the water. It was so different than anything else I had seen this year, and it was made by the same director as the movie Raw, So if you liked Raw, you kind of know what you're getting out of this director, but really horrifying and disturbing images early on in the movie, but then later on, there's this really heartfelt and emotional relationship between a father and son. And I really like that balance or duality of the story. And then the end of the movie is just crazy. So I know I keep saying check out this movie and the end of the movie, but Titane, if you take anything away from this video, Titane, don't see this movie and be freaked out and say, Jeremy, why did you recommend such a disturbing movie? It is disturbing, but if that sounds good to you, you need to check out Titane. All right, we're coming up to the last 5 movies that I have on my list. If you're interested in the full list, I'm going to make a letterboxed list that talks about this in a little bit more detail, and you can check it out in the link below. But this next movie I want to talk about is called Lamb. So Lamb is another A24 movie. I know I see every A24 movie, but what can I say? They put out some really good films, and Lamb is no exception. So Lamb is about a couple who doesn't have children, right? They seem like they've been together for a while. They're living in the outskirts of, it looks like, the Netherlands, and they don't have children. But one day they get a child, and you know, you don't really see what's going on until they finally reveal, and there's this grand reveal of what the child is. And what it is really strange, and it says a lot about humanity. And Lamb is another one of those installments of the A24 library that really takes on a deeper meaning. You know, it's not what it looks like in the beginning, and I think, you know, some people might write this movie off as ridiculous and that's dumb. Why would I ever watch a movie about that? But Lamb is worth your time. And if you are into these thought-provoking movies that are really just analogies or representations of something else, I think Lamb does a really effective job of communicating its message. And in addition to that, the performances are excellent, and I never for a second didn't believe all of the crazy stuff that was happening in Lamb. It's a bit of a slow burn, but I think if you can make it through to the end, there's a rewarding end sequence that really keeps you on your toes. So check out Lamb. Yeah, so I'm just going to come out and say it. The next movie is Dune, and I wanted to put this at number 1, but again, it's not ranked. And there was a movie later on this list that exceeded my expectations more than Dune. So Dune, I'm not going to say anything that hasn't already been said on other YouTube videos, but it was just completely captivating and enthralling. And it's a science fiction movie directed by Denis Villeneuve, one of the best in the business. I've seen every one of his movies, and everyone is excellent, especially this one, and especially Blade Runner. But any movie by Denis Villeneuve, I'll see from now on out. And Dune, a lot of people were angry because this feels like an incomplete movie. But the world building, the characters, the visuals. I saw this movie in a Dolby Atmos AMC theater, not a sponsor yet, unless they want to be. And it was just unbelievable how we were transported into the world of Dune. And I read the book a long time ago, and this movie is a really faithful adaptation of Dune. I feel like this is a little bit heresy to say, but I do feel like it is better than the David Lynch version. And, you know, say what you will about that version, it has its moments, but Dune by Denis Villeneuve is one of the most accessible science fiction movies of this complexity. And there's going to be a second one, all right? Sorry I spoiled that, but there's going to be a second Dune, if you didn't already know, probably coming out next year or later than that, and I'll be first in line to see Dune Part 2. All right, this is chronological order, but we're coming on to my favorite movie that I saw this year. This was by far and away my favorite movie of 2021, called Last Night in Soho. Last Night in Soho, directed by Edgar Wright, features Thomasin McKenzie exploring the world of downtown London. And she really, she moves away from her grandmother's after going to college, and she discovers that she's really not cut out for the college lifestyle of drinking and celebrating and partying and whatever it might be. So she moves into this house of this old woman and starts to experience these really strange phenomena whenever she goes to sleep. And I thought this movie, especially the first scene where she gets transported into the past and sees all these new things happening, the music and all of the things that come around this sequence where she's transported to the past is worth the price of admission. I was blown away by the direction, the style, the clothing, the acting, of course. Last Night in Soho, I don't have the words to express it, but it really, really struck me right here. So I'm gonna watch Last Night in Soho again for sure, and I hope you check it out because it was my favorite movie that I saw this year. All right, the last two movies of this year that I saw that I want to talk about. Of course, there's other movies, and you can check out my letterbox for those. The second to last one is called Tick, Tick, Boom. And this is really the story about the man that wrote musicals. He wrote the musical called Rent, which I have never seen, but this is really the story of his life. And it also happens to be a musical that he himself wrote. And it came to be his first musical that was really a Broadway success. So if you like musicals, Tick, Tick, Boom is going to be right up your alley. This is more of a modern musical as opposed to the La La Land-esque musicals of the 50s and 60s. You have rock music and drums and all sorts of modern rock-inspired Broadway shows. If you're familiar with those, Rent is as I understand it, a big inspiration. This is directed by Lin-Manuel Miranda, who made the musical called Hamilton. And I really feel like Andrew Garfield's performance in this movie is one that really blew me out of the water. You wouldn't know that this man has never sung a note in his life or been on a Broadway show because he's a natural. And I think people who are into Broadway and into musicals are really going to enjoy Tick, Tick, Boom. All right, we're saving the not the best, because that was already announced, but one of the best movies this year for last, and that is, of course, Licorice Pizza. Licorice Pizza is directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, and it's starring one of the band Haim, one of the sisters in Haim, named Alana Haim, as well as the son of the late Philip Seymour Hoffman, named Cooper Hoffman. These two fall in love, or will they, won't they fall in love, in the 1970s in the San Fernando Valley in California. But, you know, I will say, like all Paul Thomas Anderson movies, this movie is not about really any individual scene or the story even. It's about the moments that these characters have together. And I think this movie only works with these characters and these acting performances. Paul Thomas Anderson has a knack for getting the characters to really get you to buy into their relationship and get you to care about them. And I think by the end of this movie, for me it was much earlier on, but by the end of this movie you do care about these characters because they're real. And I think the stylistic choices that Paul Thomas Anderson took in this movie, from the music and the costumes and the action sequences, were really purposeful. and people are going to be analyzing this movie for years. It's not Boogie Nights. So if you're familiar with Paul Thomas Anderson's earlier work, you might be drawing comparisons. It's totally different. I think this is a family-friendly film for the most part. I really enjoyed it, and I think you will too. Check out Paul Thomas Anderson's Licorice Pizza. Whew. So that was my best movies that I saw this year, 2021. I know I probably missed a ton of movies. I haven't watched Pig yet. I haven't seen House of Gucci. I just started watching this movie called Don't Look Up by Adam McKay. Would those end up on the list? I don't know, but let me know what you think. Let me know what movies I missed out on, and I really hope you enjoyed watching this video. And if you did, let me know in the comments, and I hope you have a great 2022. See you at the movies.